like, can we just have some conversation? Like, who is the bearded bad dad?
Well, the bearded bad dad it's many different things all thrown into one thing. And if I had to come up with a name for the podcast, and I'm like, well, the ex-wives are always talking about how big of a bad dad I am, so, and so I am a real parent with real problems, and I'm honest with my kids. I call them little assholes when they're being little assholes. I don't sugarcoat anything. you
I
know
love
it's it well, so I explained to my kids a long time ago, hey, sometimes I use these words that other people might say are hurtful. Like I might call them a moron, like get out of here, moron. It's not that I'm actually calling them a moron. It's like a term of endearment. That's how we talk around here. And I think my kids get it. And I over explain it all the time to help them understand, hey, I'm not an asshole. I'm just an asshole.
it. This is who your dad is, and it's not going
Right.
to change no matter how much you want it to change. I love you very much, but
Get
this is
out of
how I
here.
talk, right, moron?
Yes,
I love
exactly.
him because my best friend does that to his son too. He calls his son a little asshole all the time. His little son will flip you off. Like it's great. Like be like there's nothing wrong with that. He understands there's a time and a place. He understands who he can and can't do that shit to, right? Like I'm sure
Right.
you're probably the same way.
Absolutely. My 5-year-old, man, he's got autism, and he at home, sometimes you'll hear him like walking around, shut the fuck up. And,
It's so
and
hard not to laugh, I'm
no,
sure.
well, we have to, man, because if we correct him, it gets worse. Like it makes him like that's he'll repeat it for an hour just because he knows it's getting to you. And then it's like, well, what do you do? He's autistic, so you can't he wouldn't understand what he's being hit for if you spank him. So
Right.
like spanking's out of the question. I wouldn't do that anyway. But I like him to be able to speak freely wherever he's at. And my 15-year-old knows that there's a time and a place. And like my 20-year-old, when he was the only kid that I have that I had to really make him not cuss because he wouldn't he'd get caught doing it at school.
Oh shit.
So I'm like, man, listen, if you could go to school and not cuss, it wouldn't be a big deal. But since you can't go to school and mind your manners and be respectful, I don't want you to do it anywhere. And he's like, fair enough. Fair enough. So
I mean, but I think that speaks volumes to about you as a parent, like because he got it. You know what I mean? Like you had this privilege, you lost this privilege because you couldn't act right in appropriate situations. I have a potty mouth, man. I'm an infantry guy, for 13 years, 4 times to war. Like, fuck is my favorite word. You know what I mean? It's
yes.
never going to stop. But I also have enough control to read a room and understand. Probably can't be dropping f bombs here. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Absolutely. There's sometimes I do it for shock value
Oh
because
yeah.
I
Well,
like
because
sometimes
what
I just
other
don't
word?
care.
Right. What other word though? This is an interesting conversation, and like
Well, cunt is
the
a good one.
only. Oh, that's a really good one. That's a really, I when I met my wife and she was okay with me using that word, I was like, this is fucking awesome. This,
Yeah, I'm gonna wear it out.
right, right. But those words are only bad because somebody said they were bad. Like, what other word in the English language do you know of, universally in any language, that fuck can be all the things and carry as much weight as it does? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I
sometimes
agree.
there's no better word to use to get your point across. And I don't understand why people are getting their panties in a bunch about it.
I have no idea either. It's so I do think there's a respect thing that goes into it that like if you really got to understand that there's a time and a place, and some people don't. But I think so I'm more one of those like free speech absolutists. You
Yes.
should be able to say whatever you want, whenever you want, and within reason. Like you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. You can't tell the judge to fuck off,
You
things
can't,
like
yeah,
that.
like what's going on here in Florida. Have you seen what the sheriff has done here?
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking teenagers, man. Like, you want to fucking talk about taking a gun to school and killing people? They're gonna treat it like a legit threat, and they're gonna perp walk your ass to fucking jail the next day it happened. And I was like,
And
oh,
then and then if they find out that your parents could have done something about it, they're gonna be perp walked right alongside them. And I absolutely agree with that. In certain circumstances, it does. Man, we got to take a hard line with these kids, or else we're gonna end up with a lot of fucked up shit happening, you know?
mhm,
And that guy's just doing his part, you
right,
know. And a lot of these other people that are too scared to say the truth because this person over here might have a problem with it, it's causing a lot of damage. It
big time.
really is. And I'm a firm believer in the only way to combat a bad idea is with good ideas.
Correct.
That is the only way. Shutting them up, shutting them down, all that's going to do is make people more curious. Like, why are you shutting them down? Why won't you let them speak? And it gives them a bigger voice.
I think that there's something to that, man, because they're just gonna come up with a worse idea.
Well, like conspiracy theorists, like that was a word invented by the CIA. Conspiracy is a word, theory is a word, and put them together, that's a CIA thing. And
Fucking
uh
go.
exactly. Like if I disagree with a lot of things that's, with the current political thing going on, the current political climate, if I disagree with one side over the other, I get attacked. And it's not like I don't agree with either side about a lot of things.
Nope.
I'm not right. I'm not left. But if I disagree with something the left says, the left will attack my person, like attack me personally. If I disagree with something the right says, I'm an idiot.
Well, and there's something bigger going on here. First of all, when did it become a two-party system? Like, when did we forget that this is not right versus left? Like, there are options here. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, then you have shit. This still blows my mind. I don't understand this at all. But how do we have someone on the ballot that didn't win a fucking primary? That's a big fucking problem.
Yeah.
I don't
I
care what
agree.
side you're on. And let me be very clear. I'm not on either side by any means. I'm like you. I think 99% of Americans agree on 99% of things and live somewhere in, the middle, right? Like, I think we're not considering the middle as a thing anymore. It's either you're this side or that side. It doesn't matter. And I don't think that's true at all. I think the majority of us are in the middle somewhere. We see valid points on either side, but it's that pendulum effect, right? It swung so far one way, now it's swinging so far the other way, and you have to live on that far end of the spectrum. And I think that's bullshit, right? Like, there's a lot of things that, I'm a gun guy, like fucking Second Amendment, period, end of story.
Right.
But also, I don't have a dog in the fight in the abortion fucking issue. Like, I'm not a woman. Like, I think that there are things that you have to consider in that. Like, if she decides she's going to go have an abortion and, you don't get a choice in that, that also needs to swing the other way. Like, you don't want to have it, but she wants to have it. Well, why am I on the hook for child support for 18 fucking years, right? You can go as
Right.
simple as like, okay, well, abortion is legal. We can kill babies, however you want to look at that. Well, then why is this guy being charged twice for murder if, you can still abort that baby at the same time? Like, there's some flaws in the logic, right? But
Right.
again, I don't have a dog in the fight. So, like, I could care less about that. I'm still confused as to like why the LGBTQ community thinks they don't have rights. Like, fuck, you have rights. Everybody has rights. We all have the same fucking rights. Read the bills.
The Constitution. Yes.
Yeah, like, it's just I don't know where it all comes from, right? Well, I think I do know where it comes from, but that's probably not a topic of conversation
Well,
for the.
it came, I had this theory the other day. I had like an epiphany, if you will. I was just sitting down thinking about like the education system and what its true purpose is. A lot of people don't really know that the American education system is made to make workers.
Yes, I
It,
know
it's
that.
not, it's not there to make anybody smart. Nobody cares about being smart. And I think somewhere along the line, educators have gotten in their head that we're here to educate you to think a certain way instead of knowing how to think and think critically. And
Well,
it,
that's
it,
the line between education and indoctrination.
yes,
Right. I mean, there's no other way to put that. At some point, and yeah, like you, I had to do some research and found out, and if I'm not mistaken, it was John D. Rockefeller who said, "I want a nation of doers, not of thinkers." Right.
right.
When the public school system was created back in the Industrial Revolution. And so, we have moved into this. I do think I even, I'm a product of I was born in 85, so the late 80s, early 90s. I think that my public school education in Southern Indiana was pretty good. I don't really see a whole lot of flaws with it. Like, I didn't feel like anything was pushed on me. Like, we had things like FFA, and if you were a farmer in the area, you're participating in that and taking classes in high school that are going to prepare you to run your farm, your family farm, or whatever. Like, we had the voc rehab programs or whatever they called them, where you would go to another high school and learn a trade, and then that was your education. So I didn't see a whole lot of that with the public education system when I was in it, but I can definitely see where it's going now. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the books that were required reading when I was in high school are no longer required reading. Grapes of Wrath, Ayn Rand, The Giver, shit like that. I'm sure you probably read a lot of that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I
I
didn't really
those
understand it at the time, but I do now.
right, right.
Yeah.
It's
Like my
there's
kids don't know how to
value.
write cursive.
Dude, people don't know how to read cursive.
Yeah, I know that. We was laughing about it a couple of years ago. We had a graduation party for my niece and nephew. I don't know how many of them. There's two nephews, and a niece, and my son. So there's four of them. We were having a joint graduation party because all four of my siblings and I, we all got pregnant at the same time. So we all had kids at the same time, same year. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of neat to throw them a joint graduation party? And two of the four couldn't read cursive. They couldn't read their cards. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I wonder if that was done on purpose because, like, Latin's a dead language, but all our legal papers are in Latin, you know?
It's
And
interesting. It's so funny that you say that because I do have that community that I talked about. And one of the things I did for my founding members who took the chance on me when we launched is I sent them some stickers and a handwritten letter, expressing my gratitude and thanks for taking a chance on me. I have a very unique writing style. I call it pensive. It's very sloppy and it's very hard to read, but you can read it if I mean, it's going to be a struggle, I think, probably. I mean, it's a struggle for me and I wrote it. So, but I
yeah,
had a guy come back to me. He's like, dude, this is Greek to me. I can't read it at all. And it
yeah.
because of the cursive letters, right? And I was just like mind blown, like, holy shit, where are we as a society right now?
Yeah, my
Well,
wife does the same thing, pensive.
yeah, dude, I'm telling you, and it's sloppy, it's tiny, it's small, I could be a better penman if I cared to be. I mean, but it's been
Yeah, that's
90% of
the
the time typing on a computer, like why
right.
do I need to pick up a pen and write?
And that's exactly why kids can't read or write cursive is because people have somewhere along the line have forgotten why we need to know these things is because all our historical documents are in cursive. All our historical documents are in other languages. Sometimes we got to read that shit. So I often wonder if there's some nefarious thinking behind the reason why it's like, I'm getting ready to talk to a guy about uh, CRT in
Mhm.
schools. And that's a big thing because, I do see what there are certain themes in schools that are being taught that I don't approve of. I don't want my kids knowing those themes at such a young age because they don't. You have to apply critical thinking to a lot of these themes. Otherwise, you're going to think that way.
Well, I
It's,
think it's even simpler than that, right? If you really think back to, and I don't know if you can do this or not, but think back to when we were little kids. I grew up in Southern Indiana, not a lot of other races around, but they're there. We didn't see color. I was taught not to see color, right? And so largely, I think kids in the school system, unless it's being espoused to them from some other medium, I don't think they're going to school saying, "Oh, little black Tommy over here is my best friend" or whatever. Like, I don't think they're seeing color.
Right.
I think that's an outside influence that's perpetuated.
Yeah. So like
I could
I
be
was
wrong. I
mentioning
don't know.
before, I'm I'm about an hour north of Kansas City. So like it's a small city, 75,000 people. Well, we kind of grew up similarly. I mean, there was diversity here, but it wasn't very prevalent.
Mhm.
But there was enough. Well, like there was no hate. There was nothing like until high school and above. That's usually where we had our differences or whatever. I don't know if that's because of the things we were learning in school, like systemic racism is a thing. I don't know if it is or not. I never heard that word until I was an adult. Systemic racism,
Mhm.
you know, and so that's another reason behind the podcast is because I'm a very interested and curious person. I like to know shit. So I'm
I'm the same
very
thing, man.
it's like well, some of the things I wanted to talk to you about is when I noticed that you were into holistic medicine and plant medicine. Me too. So
Let's
I
talk about this, brother, because this is my jam.
I've been self-medicating for oh 30 years ish.
Okay.
So I'm 39. I was born in 85. I've
What month?
been what's that?
What month?
April.
I was in May.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it is really awesome.
But no, so I've been self-medicating for a long time. Before it was way before it was legal and way before I was 18. It was for me, it was life-changing when I found pot.
Mhm.
But I think what really changed my life was when I found the day I found shrooms, man.
Yes, sir. So my journey is like everybody else experimented with pot. It's the only drug I've ever done other than the ayahuasca in my life. So a little context there, but weed in southern Indiana in the 90s and early 2000s when I was smoking it in high school was largely dirt weed. It wasn't very good, particularly compared to like legal marijuana or rec marijuana now, like not even close. So, and then I quit the entire time, obviously, because you can't do that in the army, like not allowed, right? Hard stop, like that's the rule. I kick dudes out for it, like no second chances. You know the rules, you broke the rules. I don't need, dudes on my squad, team, platoon, whatever, that can't follow a simple rule. Like I understand it's great. I love it. I'm not against it in any way, shape, or form. And so, getting out of the army, that's a whole nother kind of issue that I'm trying to tackle in my business and everything else, right? And largely what happens is when you get out, you go to the VA. The VA, we all know, is fucked beyond all belief. And they just want to throw pills at you and throw pills at you and throw pills at you. And what I quickly discovered is I was watching all my buddies go get on. I mean, I'm no exaggeration, 12, 15 different pills at one time that they have to take every day. And they turn into zombies. Not only do they turn into zombies, but they still try to kill themselves. So like what are we doing here? So I knew that wasn't an option for me. And we talked about the Sean Ryan show. I found that show at a dark point in my life. When he sat down and talked to Trevor Millar and he talked to his wife about his Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT experience, I was like, that's it. That's what I need to seek. So I started doing my research and I got hooked up with Heroic Hearts Project. They sent me to Peru in July of last year for an entire week. And I went there with a completely open mind. And at the time, that was not something I was capable of doing. I was pretty angry at everything. But I did. I promised myself I would participate in every event at the retreat, and that I would do everything with an open mind. I would just keep my mind open to everything because that shit was largely what I would call woo woo at the time, right? Like this fucking hippie bullshit, like woo woo, fucking crazy. Yeah, okay. First time I take, first ceremony, first night of ayahuasca. all of that went away. It completely changed my life. And I mean, when I say completely changed my life, to the tune of I've lost 100 pounds in a year. I went to Peru at 311 pounds. I weighed in last week. At the lowest I had been at 210 pounds. Now I probably
Congratulations,
won't,
man.
yeah, I probably won't stay there. But I learned about gratitude. I learned about abundance mindsets. I learned about meditation. I learned about mindset. I learned about yoga. And what I thought yoga was get on a mat and do fucking impossible stretches. Well, it's really incorporating breath work and mindfulness and meditation. It's like all of the things in one thing. And then I discovered fasting and the benefits to fasting, which leads you down the food rabbit hole, which leads you to all these other rabbit holes. And before I went on the ayahuasca experience, I was like you. I was using weed to escape because I had beat the alcohol. Alcohol is poison. I won't touch it. That's not true. I'll have like one, like on Sunday, watching the afternoon game or something. But largely, that's not every week either. I went from Super Bowl till first week of kickoff this year without having a single drop of alcohol. So like it's just one of those kind of ritual things, if you will, for me with the alcohol. But I was using weed to escape, and that's all different now. I use cannabis and all of that as very intentional and to explore and do the deep work on myself and really explore the things that ail me, the things that I'm stressed about. Why am I stressed about these? Really is another mindfulness tool, if you will. I also love microdosing mushrooms. I've not actually done a hero dose of mushrooms yet, but for me, like I told you, having that psychedelic experience in that ceremonial setting in the high Amazon of Peru with, real medicine men and women who spend their lives perfecting this and learning how to use this and the ceremony of all of it, I prefer to keep my psychedelic use kind of in that setting, if you will.
Yes. Yes, I appreciate that because it's the only reason that I haven't gone. Me and my buddy, we have a term, we call it bitch town.
Mhm.
So when I partake in eating shrooms or whatever, the first time I ever did it, I did it recreationally. And, I ate a quarter ounce
Ooh,
and yeah. And so we were really, really out
you
there.
passed it off for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he was on his phone watching videos and this guy on the video said, "Hey, we're in Bitch Town." And I was like, "That's it. We're in Bitch Town. That's where we are." And so that's what I call it now. But like I started using recreationally. I started using psychedelics recreationally, and then I had a bad trip.
Well, those come
And
from not setting the proper intentions, by the way.
yes, it it took me on a journey, man. It took me on a journey that I needed to go on.
Yep.
And then after that, I swore off mushrooms. I was never going to do them again. It's the worst experience I ever had in my life. I was in the shower thinking about it, and I thought, 3.5 hours of pretty good fun versus, 5 minutes of sheer terror.
Mhm.
I think I got my money's worth. And it was after that, I didn't need to use them recreationally anymore. I didn't want to use them recreationally anymore. I just wanted to use when I needed to go on that journey. When
Well,
I
and this,
felt like I needed to be shown something, that's when I partake. And last few weekends I've been like, hey, get me some applesauce. I'm going to go on a journey this weekend. But that journey didn't happen because I didn't need it,
well,
you know.
and what you're speaking about, it's not even you, it's the medicine actually calls to you. It tells you when you need to come back to it. That was one of the biggest takeaways I got from the integration training at Peru. And I actually went on after that experience and went through being true to you psychedelic integration and addiction recovery coaching certification course. So I'm actually a certified coach in integration with psychedelics. And I really truly believe, part of what they taught us in Peru when we were leaving is like some of you will be back in 6 months. Some of you will do this again in a year. Some of you will do this again in 6 years. Some of you will never be back. The medicine will tell you when it's time to come back. And largely for the first year, because it was July 7th of 2023 is when the retreat ended. even through July of this year, I really hadn't felt a call back to it. And here, as we're progressing through the end of the year, and I'm very self-aware now, and I don't know if that's your experience with
Yeah.
psychedelics, but very self-aware. So I'm very in tune with where I'm slipping, where I'm not being disciplined enough in certain areas of my life that have made me better. And I can't seem to get a grasp on that. And I think that's the sign from the medicine that it's time to come back and learn some more lessons, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would interpret it that way or not, but that's very
That's
much how I interpret it.
that's kind of how I feel at the moment because I think there are certain areas of my life where I'm slipping a little bit, and I that's the reason why. As to why, hey, grab some applesauce. You know, I'm going to go on a journey this weekend, and the weekend comes, and life happens. I get caught up, you know, with the kids, and it's a set and setting kind of thing. You can't just jump into it, you know.
That's a bad
Uh,
one. That's a really bad.
that's exactly what happened during my bad trip was we had an emergency and the wife had to leave. And in that moment, it was like I needed the horrible time that I had. I
Oh yeah.
needed it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then the following time was one of the most magical times. Just sat and I had my eyes closed and I was watching the world paint itself with my eyes closed. And it was amazing. And the time after that was clean, serene. I had a great time and I had one of the greatest business ideas I ever had in my life. Now, whether I'll ever implement that or if I have the money to have, you know, make that come to fruition, it's a pretty genius idea.
Brother, take damn action on that shit.
I'm telling you. So if I didn't have, I was telling somebody this the other day, like, and I actually heard it from Julian Dory when I had him on the podcast. He said, right now, money could solve all my problems. If I had more money, all my problems would be solved. And I feel like that's true in my case because I love my life. Like I love my kids, love my wife, love where I live. You know, I wish I could go more on vacations, but that comes with money. You know, all my problems could be solved with money. And it's not necessarily that it can, like, I don't have trying to think of how to put this. It's not like I'm ungrateful for the things that I have because I'm extremely grateful for the things that I have. It's just I can't figure out a way to make some of these things come into fruition and without putting anybody else out, without being a burden. And like the economy is so bad right now, man. We just spent like $1,000 on groceries and it's not even going to last a month.
I know
And
it's ridiculous. And it's just me and my wife and the dogs here. And it's like I not anywhere near a thousand
yeah, have
dollars.
you ever
But like,
ever in your life said I can't afford a dog?
no, no, dude.
Exactly.
And I've had to switch, to I fed Apollo, my 7-year-old golden retriever, the same Nutrisource food for his entire life until 2 months ago. That bag of food, when I first got him as a puppy, used to cost like 40 something dollars. It is over $93 a bag now.
Oh, Jesus.
So
Yeah,
I now feed him weight management Costco dog food because it's $40 for a 40-pound bag and it lasts all month and he loves it. And great, let's do that.
yeah, my
But
cat costs $100 a month, dude.
that's insane. Like, well,
Yeah.
they take care of themselves. like, no, but I think you have a great perspective on money, and I think it's a really good one to have. You're seeing money for what it is the tool. It's not something to be, you know, t you're not associating the amount of money you have with the amount of happiness that you're going to have. And I'm the same way, man. I'll be the first to tell you, I'm fucking running at like $600 a month to run my business. I'm bringing in $260 a month. Obviously, we're in the red there. Like, not, and, I also, dealing with some dynamics between my wife and I, and I'm largely supporting all of the bills in the house, so there's not a lot of extra money, you know what I mean? But that's what we do as partners, and we cover down when we fall on hard times or whatever. I'm not complaining by any means. I love my wife very much. I'm very happy in my life, but these are the things that and it's we don't fight about money. You know why? Because we understand money is the tool that that is going to unlock so many other things for us. And I'll tell you, man, in everything that I've been doing, because I've let go of trying to grasp at money and like looking at money to make me happy or solve my problems, and I just genuinely help people, it's opened so many doors and opportunities for me that I was never even aware were out there. Like I was talking about
Absolutely.
having Tom Spooner on the show, and because of the way I handled that show, it's opened so many doors for me. Before I'm like, I was just a conventional army guy. That's a Delta Force guy. That's a superhero to me. And he's telling me how grateful he is to that I put on a show that was the opposite of what he was prepared for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with the fact that, he's a larger, well-known guy that can drive my podcast forward. It was just, I am interested in what he's doing with his nonprofit and saving veteran lives. And, that was what the focus of the show was. You know what I mean? And so when you let go of the agenda of making money, I think life does really get so much better when you can look at it as the tool that it is to further your cause. Man, it'll start to come to you too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we had touched briefly on it before that, with the podcasting stuff, and competition, and the really good ones will talk about, work stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas, man, I've come in contact with a lot of people that get a hold of me just to fish and see if they can steal ideas. And it's like, well, you don't have to steal them. I'll give them to you,
Yeah,
you
I'll
know?
give you everything I got because you know what
Right.
you're missing? You're missing me. You don't have
Exactly.
you can't be me. You can't host a show like I can, just like I can't host a show like you can.
Yeah, I have no competition. I'm the competition right now, especially is with myself. Like
Always.
I'm trying to
It's
make
always
the next show better than the last.
I love it,
And
man. We're on the same wavelength here, just so you know.
that's awesome. And I absolutely love that because and getting a hold of somebody like you and that understands it, like actually what I'm doing. I had a guest reach out, and this is a fairly new phenomenon for me, guests reaching out.
It's
I had a
cool, isn't
guest
it?
reach out to me and they had, pitched themselves to me. And after the pitch, I agreed. And then they wanted me to sell myself to them. And I'm like, they asked me what I could offer or and how many followers I had. And I'm like, if you're worried about that kind of stuff, this is the wrong show for you, because I don't, number one, I don't care how many, like that's a whole bunch of administrative stuff that I'm not willing to do. I'm
Yeah.
not willing to keep up with how many subscribers I have just so I can, tell my guests, oh, this is what you're going to get if you come on. No, I can't promise anything other than a good interactive conversation. I can't promise anything other than myself. That's what I'm selling.
What that's speaking to is that person's mindset. They clearly only care about money and reach, but I have a different philosophy on that. I don't give a shit how many followers you have on social media. I don't care if one person watches this podcast. I'm of the mindset the more of these that I go on, the more places I exist on the internet, the more chance I have of being found.
Exactly.
Really that simple.
Exactly.
And there's something beautiful about that because in doing that, I get to meet people like you. You and I have never had a conversation before, ever. This
Right.
is our first conversation, and it's a fucking good one, man. And that's the beauty of doing this because this turns into I now have a mentor who's a seven-figure entrepreneur. I went on his podcast. He loved everything that I was talking about, and he's very strict to the 1 hour. And at the end of it, he's told his audience before he stopped recording, like, "Hey, I'm going to bring this guy back for a really deep dive, 2.5, 3, 4 hour podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that," because that's a lot of fun for me. You know, I genuinely enjoy getting up every day. looking at my full calendar of meetings and podcast recordings and podcast guest appearances, just knowing that my full-time job is talking to people.
Dude, like you said, this simpatico, man. I love the same. I don't like filling my calendar. That's the only part about my job that I don't like. I don't like filling my calendar. I don't like reaching out. Guest outreach for me is weird because I'm the type of guy that I just want to say what's on my mind and get you like if you agree, you agree. If you don't, you don't. That's fine. I
Are you open to some advice?
What's that?
Just do it. Be who you are. Reach out to those people. I told you, when we first came on the conversation, that's exactly what I do. It's nothing fancy. It's Podmatch, for example. Hey, I think that I could bring some value to your audience. I'd love for you to check out my profile and let me know what you think. And I hit send and I forget about it. I don't care. And dude, I'm telling you, like, I really, truly, and I hope this resonates with you, your audience, anybody listening to this. I believe authenticity is the new digital currency. So if you don't like guest outreach because you feel like you have to tailor your message to be somebody that you're not, I encourage you to stop doing that immediately and tailor that message to who the fuck you actually are. And I'm willing to bet you that you'll reach out to me after you've tried this and be like, fuck, this shit works. Like
I
I promise
appreciate
you,
it,
man.
man.
I genuinely, you can go. I don't know how many podcasts I've appeared on, how many of them have been released to this point. I set a goal for myself to do 25 this year. I know that I've blown that out of the water at this point. Um, but you can look at my show, you can look at my guest appearances. I'm the same person that you're going to get on your show, on the next show, on my show, in a meeting with me, in my community, in real life. Like, and I have the social proof to prove it, right? Like I had a guest on my podcast, the third guest ever. Then I ended up in Utah and Arizona for a trip. That third guest was like, "Hey man, do you need a ride from the airport? I'd like to pick you up and hang out with you all day. I want to meet you in person." That ended up turning into like this long lost friendship that we didn't even know we had. And his words to me were like, "Dude, I had so much fun on your podcast. You're just so genuine and authentic in who you are. I had to meet you in real life to see if it's a front." He's like, "It's fucking not a front." He's like, "You're exactly who you say you are in person, as you are on the podcast, as you are on my podcast, as you are in meetings, as you talk about on LinkedIn." Like
Yeah.
and I really genuinely, and I can't take credit for the authenticity is digital currency. I can't remember where that come from to give them proper credit, but I really genuinely believe that because it's working for me.
I also think it's a generational thing. Our generation is so fed up with the bullshit. I'm it's gotten to the point now with media, you don't know what's real and what's not, you
No,
know?
but
And
it's funny. I was telling you about the hurricane that's going to hit here, right? Do you know where I
yeah,
get weather information?
what's that?
From TikTok on Mike's weather page.
No
The
shit.
Noble, he's never steered me wrong, dude. Ever, ever.
I told my wife, I was like, so I do watch mainstream media. Like my TV right now is tuned to News Nation, and but it's either on News Nation or some kind of sports. And the reason why I do that is because my autistic child, he loves to take control of my television, and if it's on sports or news, he won't touch it. So that's where it stays. But it's usually tuned to News Nation, but I will watch mainstream media as like background. But my day is spent consuming uh, other sources of media, podcasts, social media posts, independent journalists. Um, and the main reason why is because I get truth out of that, more truth than what the mainstream media has to offer. And it's like you can switch between the three biggest mainstream media channels, and you'll hear the same story spun three different ways. I just want the truth.
Yeah.
And so there's this thing that I'm sure you've run around in the same podcast circles that I do. It's ground.news.
I have not heard of that, but I'm
Okay,
gonna have
it's
to check
check
it
them
out.
out because it's ground news, and it's really a website that it tells you the biases of what you're looking at.
There was another website that I used to look. I pay attention to no mainstream media anymore whatsoever. The most mainstream media I will get is during football games on Saturdays, Sundays, Thursdays, Mondays. You know the schedule. You're a football fan. I see the Chiefs Cup. I see the NFL hat. Right? Like you get what I'm talking.
Absolutely.
So that's my interaction with mainstream media. And that comes from my trip to Peru. The owner of the retreat, his name's Vlad. He's one of the most amazing humans I've ever met. And we can talk about that later. But one of the things he said was, Peru was very different during COVID. They didn't really shut anything down. He didn't watch any news to find out what was going on because he very much believes in the power of community, and the community will inform you when something major is about to happen. You will go to town, to the market to buy your groceries or whatever, and you will get a sense of what is going on in the world. And I really like that approach because all this shit you see on mainstream media, how much of it affects you in Missouri and how much of it
None.
affects me in Florida, right? What you need to be concerned with. And this is why I kind of hate local media, because all the big TV stations, for example, I live on the coast here in Florida on the East Coast. I'm not going to tell everybody where I live, but all of our news is tailored to Orlando because that's where all the big stations are.
I
Why don't
love Orlando, man.
you really?
I do. Universal Studios is my favorite spot in the whole world.
I can get on board with that. I hate Disney. I've never even been to Disney, and I live here. We do have
I've
yearly
been there. It's not that great.
we have universal yearly passes. So my wife loves Harry Potter. And it's
Me
kind of fun.
too.
It's kind of fun to go over there and do the water parks in the summer because it's fucking hot. But I largely hate Orlando because I'm just not big city friendly and I don't like tourists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Orlando is probably, I think, the biggest tourist spot in America, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think it's a toss up between Los Angeles and Orlando, but I think it's Orlando simply because of Disney World. I think they get more traffic at Disney World than most other places ever. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true.
But Orlando, their local, we'll just take the weather, for example. It's so different than me being over here on the coast, right? And they don't touch on the coast weather a whole lot unless it's a major event that's about to happen, like this hurricane. We don't even, Mike's weather page suspects it's going to make landfall as a Cat 5, which is, I mean, that's as high as it goes. Like that's rough. But like they don't talk about that shit. And the reason the weather's so different is because you have both the sea breezes and they compete with one another. And what happens when they compete with one another is one of them ultimately wins, and all of that weather forms over Orlando. So it could be disgusting, rainy, stormy in Orlando, and it's a gorgeous day over here on the beach, and I'm chilling with my feet up, getting a suntan. You know what I mean? So like that's my problem with mainstream media. So I said all of that to talk about this website when I did look at mainstream media that did something similar. It was, I forget what it was called, but you would read an article and would have like a red side for the Republicans and how their headline and how they're spinning it. It would have the neutral one, and I don't know where the source came from, and that would have the left side. And you're like, okay, so these three things are all reporting on the same event, but they all have different fucking facts. And you're like, how is anybody supposed to make sense of this, right? Because the truth is somewhere in the middle of all three of them. And
Yeah,
like it was pleasant for me because I could see all the perspectives and the narratives that were being pushed out there. And then I could think critically as an adult and make my own decision on my opinion about whatever it is that they're talking about.
exactly. Exactly. And I think and I don't know where it comes from particularly, but I know I'm not the only one that does it. I see a lot of people my age doing it, like the millennial crowd, the older millennials especially. Like we grew up with Gen X and boomers for parents. And, so there was the start of the assholishness.
Mhm.
And then our generation, if it's not true, I don't see any point in saying things like that, but I also don't see a point in staying quiet if like this person is spouting bullshit. Why don't we call that out?
Right.
And I know a lot of people older than and I'll talk about politicians all the time about how they're all full of shit. And I
Everything.
don't know why we deal with it. I don't know why, if this person over here gets called out, why are they still in office? Why are they still there? Why are they still allowed to hold that position? after they've been found to be lying or not a good person, or, I don't really care about a character. It's all about who's doing a good job. If they're doing a good job in their, I don't really care what they said to their wife. I don't really care if they're cheating on their wife. That has nothing to do
Yeah.
with me. Are they good at their job? Are they representing me?
So that's the key right there, right? Like we have forgotten, politicians have forgotten that they represent their constituents. It's you make decisions based on what there are a couple, I will tell you, that are in Congress right now who are going against their parties and very vocal about it. You won't see this on mainstream media though, right? They're vocal about, well, your party votes this way and you voted against your party. Well, that's what my constituents want. My
Right.
constituents wanted me to vote this. And somewhere along the line, we've gotten away from by the people for the people. You're elected to represent me, motherfucker. You
Right.
know what I mean? And you're clearly not doing that. And I'm with you on that, man. I'm 100% with you on that.
And that's what goes back to what the authenticity, in is the new digital currency. And I appreciate that because when my mom passed away in 2015, I started a whole campaign with myself to be honest with
Mhm.
myself. First of all, honest with everybody, honest with my family, honest with my friends, but most of all, honest with myself. Because if I can be honest with myself, that helps me be honest with everyone else.
That's so much
And
more than that, brother.
I,
It's so
I,
much more than that.
I have difficulty articulating things and putting them into words. Sometimes I'm just trying to spit out what I'm thinking, and that's authentic. That's me, and I like me. I spend a lot of time with me, so
You spend all of your time with you.
right. I would like to share me with the rest of the world, and that's what I'm doing here. But authenticity, like I think if I had a brand, authenticity would be my brand because I can't be somebody else. And when I reached out to you and you answered back and we had a little back and forth, it was like I was talking to my wife about this interview this morning, how I was really excited about it. I was really excited to talk to you, and I knew exactly how it was going to go. And I was like, well, if this goes exactly how I think it's going to go, it's going to be a great podcast. It's going to be a great show. And when speaking to you, and you're like, you're on the same wavelength as me as far as authenticity. And if everybody thinks like us and gets authenticity and honesty out there in the forefront and in the ether and get everybody thinking the same, like as far as honesty goes, everybody thinking the same in that if they're thinking differently they can say it.
Mhm. Dude, well, hopefully I'm living up to that expectation because that's very humbling to hear you, having conversation about and being excited about having me on your show. And we haven't even met. I was really excited based on our exchange on Podmatch to come on, but I'm always excited to do this no matter what. Like I really truly enjoy doing this because I have a philosophy, right? Like I actually was just in I do biweekly I have a community that I belong to. I belonged to it since I really got out of my own way and started building my brand and my business. But it's been super helpful for me. And we meet bi-weekly. And I was just having a conversation with one of the guys in the community this morning about he hooked me up. He signed up for Podmatch, used my affiliate link. Super grateful for that. And he's like, I haven't had really luck on it. And I was like, trying to suss out like what's going on with why he hasn't had luck. And we were talking about that. And he's like, yeah, I booked one guest, but I'm not really vibing with them. And I think I'm going to cancel. And I was like, don't do that. Don't do that. And I have this philosophy, right? I'm not going to vibe with everybody that I talk to. No way, not possible. It's just not going to happen, right? But if you approach any meeting or podcast interview or whatever with the attitude like this person has value and I can learn something from them, I guarantee you your conversation will be so much better than it would have been if you just went in there like, I don't vibe with this person. I don't want to do this. you know,
Yeah.
and I'm not telling you to fake the funk because I don't believe that that's the right answer. I had a lot of time in the army to put on that false motivation's better than no motivation bullshit. No, fuck that. But genuinely, if you switch your mindset to everybody has value and I can learn something from everybody, your conversations will get so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've only had one guest that I was ever like, maybe I'm not going to put that one out, but I ended up putting it out anyway. I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, well, you're going to tell that there's some of these that I'm not that into. And she's like, what do you
Absolutely.
mean? And I was like, the guy I was just talking to is just very stiff and kind of full of himself. And the whole time he was trying to convince me why it was just a very weird conversation at the start. Throughout the whole conversation, you could tell I didn't necessarily want to be there. I was engaged in the conversation. Like he had said something about the draft, like the draft coming back to the United States, and I was like, well, I was thinking in my head, we already have selective service. It's the draft. It's waiting on a signature. That's all it needs. And we already have that. I don't see even in a major conflict, like let's just say China and United States were to go at it. I don't see a draft happening there.
I do.
The reason why is because we have the world's biggest standing army, and
I,
I
I
don't,
definitely see it. I see it.
do you?
I do. Yeah, but you got to remember, I'm still connected to that world, so I know the quality of soldier that we have right now.
That's true.
I
That's true.
also know that it is this is tough, man, because I love the army a lot. It did a lot of good things for me. I'm also bitter about a lot of the shit the army put me through and some of the shady misgivings that went on while I was in fighting, GWAT or whatever. But I do, man. I still mentor some guys that are way up there in rank right now, and the quality is just not there.
Really?
It's not there, and I don't think you understand. Like China's a really, really big place, and
Yeah.
they're also in alignment with Russia and Brazil now, and Iran, and that's a big problem. So,
Yeah.
numbers are always going. It doesn't matter if we have the best equipment because we just left $1 trillion worth of equipment in the Middle East. You know where that's at now? It's in Iran.
Um, really? No,
Yes.
I had no idea. So I don't really, I'm not really up on all of that. I just understand, like, by looking at it, if a conflict was to start with China, and that's a big if. And I
Right.
don't, again, I'm not in any intelligence service or any intelligence circles. I don't really know any connected people, but at the same time, there's got to be a want there. There's got to be a want for a conflict, and a conflict between China and the United States. Number one, I don't see it happening anytime soon, but if it does, it's going to be Navy and air power.
I think you're right on that. I think it's going to be more digital. It's going to be way more digital. I think that,
They're already attacking every day,
of
brother.
course,
That's
of course.
already happening. And that's one of the things as a millennial I'm pissed off about because look, my electric bill this month of $400. It's been 30 years since we had any upgrades here.
Yeah.
What am I paying for? Every year they come to me and they're like, "Hey, we need another increase." And I tell them no, and that doesn't matter because they go somewhere else and get a yes.
Right.
And they promise upgrades. They promise upgrades.
And they
And
do
during
nothing.
a winter storm, when I get knocked out of power for 3 days and I'm complaining about it, my boomer friends are like, "Oh, this happens. You got to be calm. And I'm like, I understand that it happens. But when I call the people and there's nobody out here working, there's nobody doing anything, and they can't give me any kind of communication, it's complete bullshit that we allow them to do that. It's a public utility. It's a public utility and they don't have any responsibility. They don't have any accountability. They just do whatever they want. They send me a monthly bill, and if I don't pay that bill, they cut my power off and I can't get it anywhere else because I live in a city.
I understand your frustration with that because it's like the boomers are telling you, "Oh, you got to be calm," and this happens, and it's like, yeah, you can say that because the technology was installed when you were a child. I've been paying these motherfuckers an increase every fucking year, and they've made zero upgrades. Why is the technology the same? because we shouldn't
Right.
be having these fucking problems. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I
And
don't know if you watched that Sean Ryan show with I can't remember his name, but he had that uh it was about the power grid and
yeah,
he made a documentary. And that was one of the first Sean Ryan shows I'd ever watched. And it didn't really freak me out because I can survive. A country boy can survive. I'm not really a country boy, but I was raised with them. So it's it does freak me out a little bit because like Chicago, a place like Chicago, if there was to be a cyber attack there, like affecting the power grid and millions of people are going to be gone
yep.
because they don't have access to food
Hmm.
for let's say 3 weeks. You can't go that long without food. I mean, maybe if you're 300 pounds, but that's still a long time without food. And the, I do worry about things like that. And to see all of the attacks that have happened over the last, well, since the pullout of Afghanistan, since all of that stuff, I don't see anybody working actively to fix these issues. Like that episode of Sean Ryan, like that was 2 years ago. Nobody's done anything since.
Well, and
Nobody's.
it's across the board, not just the power grid. I can remember living in Washington State. There's a bridge on
Oh
I-95
yeah.
or I-5, excuse me, not 95's here in Florida. I-5, this is called the Nisqually Bridge. I had a job while I was in flight school in college where I drove cars for Enterprise, moving them from location to location. It's largely a retiree, 65, 70-year-old guys. So two of the guys that I was working with worked for DOT for their entire lives. The Nisqually Bridge, they have just kept putting band-aids on it for over 40 years. So they go repair a crack with a weld. The whole bridge needs to be rebuilt. And it's been voted on several times. Money has been spent to do this. And it's like, it's still, I was just there 2 weeks ago. It's the same bridge, no plans to replace it, just continue to fix it. It's got like 6 feet of flex when cars drive over it, which is not good. It's really scary to think about it. And I think about that because now I have that inside information from guys who worked at DOT, telling me like this bridge it's a collapse is imminent on that bridge. And when it happens, the whole I-5 corridor is going to be shut down because there's no other way to get across, what that bridge goes over. You can't go around. You have to go all the way to the east side of the mountains and try and find a way back through the mountains to get to wherever you're going to go. It's just not, it's not
Yeah,
practical.
and back in the 50s and 60s when some of this stuff was being built, it was all built properly. And then you go to replace it and it's just like somebody's the regulations and stuff are all there. What made America great in the first place was all the manufacturing prowess and stuff. We always used, we did things the right way. That's just
Shit was built to last.
exactly. And it's like built-in obsolescence has factored into everything now. Now bridges don't they last 10 years, man. That's about it.
For
And
$25 million. Like the bitch ought to last, 25, 30 years for that kind of money.
exactly,
Well,
exactly.
well, and you can see it in other things too, right? Follow the money. The money is telling a story. I do some nonprofit work for an organization called QRF Up, and we're the competitor to 988, which is a suicide hotline, right? Everybody knows 988. Not everybody knows that at the beginning of the year, 988 was given $700 million. And as of August of this year, they still drop 54,000 calls a month.
Wow.
How $700 million and you can't get more staff?
During COVID, a lot of people were sent home remote work. And then when that happened, they figured out they had a problem. We have all these buildings sitting empty, because nobody's working in them. And so they were like, oh, didn't matter, if a guy like me was a remote worker, it didn't matter if I was happy and efficient doing what I was doing. It all it mattered was now they needed a reason to justify the building. So we got
Right.
to bring everybody back and that kind of stuff is costly, but I do understand why some of it's done though. Without the commercial real estate sector, There probably a lot of money being lost, but I agree with you. When they take everybody's making profit, everybody's making profit. So
Ridiculous. Not just
it,
profit, like more
record
profit than you
profits.
fucking need. Like
Exactly.
let's be honest. This brings up an interesting point. Like, you're a sports fan, so I'm sure you know Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
Pat McAfee is one of my favorite people in the world because he's done exactly what he said he was going to do in the sports media world. But he takes care of his people. He has a video on his YouTube about it. I'll find it and send it
That's
to you.
like that one that
The
where he
monologue
made
where
that big deal, or that one
yeah,
big deal he
when
made.
they
I was
accused
watching that.
when they accused him of paying Aaron Rodgers to come on his show, and he
I'd not seen that.
oh, this is the one I'm talking about, man. So his response to the critics talking about, oh, the only reason you got Aaron Rodgers is because you paid Aaron Rodgers to be on your show, and he's like, no, actually, Aaron Rodgers came on my show, and then I gave him a kickback because I looked at what Aaron Rodgers did for my show, and I'm very much the person that, paraphrasing here, obviously it's not a direct quote, but he's very much the person that, if my people eat good, then I continue to eat good and we can take over the world that way. So if everybody's getting their fair share and then some, and he takes care of his employees, well, clearly he's taking over the world because ESPN doesn't own his brand. ESPN licenses his brand. He
Yeah.
can fuck off ESPN and walk the fuck away, and then ESPN's fucked.
Yeah, and ESPN, like I
It's
was really
trash.
shocked when they made that deal too, because all the shit he talks on ESPN,
I
and I
think
love it.
I
I
think he's
really,
so
really
good.
like Pat McAfee.
He's so good for the Kirk's show Saturday, college
Oh
count.
yeah,
Oh man. And I know a lot of people are up in arms about it, but it's like, dude, he has unprecedented access to the people we want to hear from. That's why his show is so great. He's in the locker rooms, he's talking to the coaches, he's talking to the GMs. Like, that's the people, that we want to hear from. We want to hear real stories from real players, not, media obligatory fucking press conferences after a game or whatever.
yeah. And
Like,
the guys like us, we remember what he was like when he played,
oh yeah, well, I'm a Colts,
and
so yeah, of course I remember what he was like
right.
when he played.
So we remember what he was like when he played, and so he's got this big brand now. We know Pat as his whole career.
And
We
he's the
know
same. He's the same person. Authenticity is the digital
exactly, and
currency.
that
And
is building his brand bigger and bigger and better. And you know what? Now that this conversation has gone full circle, I look down at I know what time it is, and we got a hard stop this afternoon. But man,
let's do
this
this
has been
again,
a
brother.
great
We
conversation,
should do this
Adam.
again, man.
Absolutely.
This is
Adam
on me
Peters, the strategic veteran.
this is on
I would love to do this again. Like the exact same thing. Just sit and talk and have a conversation, good conversation. I'd like to get into the strategic veteran next time
yes, sir.
and talk about your brand and the things that you do, because I really, really dig what you do. I'm not a veteran myself, but I have a special place in my heart for veterans and the military, and believe it or not, all the shady shit that goes along with all that. I love every bit of it. I got a special place in my heart for you guys. And it this conversation it's been one for the record books, Adam. I
We'll,
appreciate it.
we'll call this the tease, and then when we get into the other stuff next time, you can see really why I am the way that I am, and kind of, the foundations I've built everything on, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate your time, man. We'll see you next time.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for having me on.